Welcome back to the garage, the place where we are making your Bronco your dream Bronco. If this is your first time here, I would love to have you subscribe as I am fully restoring this 1974 Ford Bronco. I bought this Bronco for $2,000 and my plan is to restore it, keeping track of all the parts and labor to in the end sell it and turn a profit. Now, if you are planning on doing a restoration in the future or you're doing one right now, definitely check the description below. I'm planning on trying to put together kind of a master class of all the footage that I'm getting of this restoration and putting together like a PDF on just kind of best practices, things to buy, just stuff to help you if you're in the restoration process. Now, obviously right now I don't have that stuff ready, but if you would like to know when that stuff is ready, I'll put a sign up in the description below where you can sign up to be notified when that stuff is all ready. Now, I'm calling this video day 2, but really it's been a couple months since I've worked on this restoration. In the last episode, I sent the frame off to get powder coated and now it's back and it looks fantastic. I had a shop in Georgia do the powder coat and it only cost me $450 plus a couple hours of getting it to and from the powder coater. Now, if your axles and steering components look like this, I recommend buying new parts. For only a couple $100s, you can have new steering components that will work and look great. But there are two things that you want to keep and reuse. One is your radius arms, and two, your steering box. Your radius arms are basically just a hunk of metal. You can clean them up and repaint them. You will need new bushings for them, but that will come with your suspension kit. The stock steering box on these Broncos is actually really hard to find. So instead of buying a new one, I recommend sending this one off to be built, and that is what I'm gonna do. Now, my next step is getting the axles ready to go back under my frame. Whenever you're removing old drums, it's going to be a struggle. After releasing the tension from the back, the drums just weren't coming off, so I had to use some extreme measures. So I know that I'm going pretty quick through a lot of this axle tear down and I'm not really just going step by step through it all. So if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Also, there is another video that I'll link to where I actually take apart my drum brakes on my 75 Bronco and replace the drum brakes for disc brakes. So you can kind of see some of that process there and I go through it step by step. But I did want to make mention, there's two tools when you're taking apart a Dana 44 that you really want to make sure that you have. And the reason that I'm doing all this is I'm going to send this off to powder coat, so it needs to be completely stripped down and it needs to, you know, be all empty. Now, I'm also going to re-gear these gears because I want to put a 4R70W transmission in the Bronco. And so with the 4R70W, having the stock 350 gearing, it's not really going to be a great drive. So I'm going to put 456 in there. Really with with any overdrive transmission, 456, 410, that's kind of where you want to be. So I'm going to put 456 gears in here. So I'm just going ahead, stripping everything out of it. I'm going to send it off to get powder coated and then I'll start rebuilding it. But when you're taking apart your Dana 44 drum brakes, you need this. This is a spindle lock nut socket, I believe is what it's called. Dana 44 spindle lock nut socket, spindle socket. lock nut socket. Basically what it does is your spindle sitting in here on top of the axle, and this just has 4 tabs, and it goes right into the spindle lock nut like so, and then you can tighten, loosen it, and take it apart. So I kind of skipped over that, but this is a very important tool to have when you're taking apart your drum brakes, or anything up here. I would definitely get one of these. I'll put a link in the description below where you can get one. And then the other thing is a ball joint socket, or a ball joint, I don't know what the official name is. I'll put another link in there. So I've got my knuckles, I got my axle stripped down to where all I have to do left is remove my knuckles and my bump stops. I forgot about those. And my breather tube. So I'm pretty much stripped down. But the way to remove your knuckle is you actually have to loosen the preload that's set on your ball joint. And that's what, makes it, this one's way too tight, but that's what makes it so that, it turns appropriately and it has the right amount of like friction, but not too much like it does right now because it's old and probably never been taken apart. So this is a great tool to have. I'll put a link in the description below for this as well. And these you can also rent. I think O'Reilly's has them for rent sometimes, depending on what store you're at. Being in Nashville, O'Reilly's is all over the place. So. Passenger side. Now I'm making a video remembrance of which way these go, because when you put everything back together, these are still important that they go back the same side that they were made, or that they came off of. Now another important tool that it would be good to have if you were doing this would be a press. And that's something I don't have. And so a lot of this stuff, like the ball joints on the knuckles, the axle, the U-joints in the axle, stuff like that, even rebuilding my center section, like all of that requires a press. So I don't have a press, and so I will be taking a lot of this stuff to a shop with a press. But if you want to invest in a press, I think it's a good investment. But it's one of those things that it just takes up room in your shop until you need it. So if you have a buddy with a press, that's an even better option. With the axles stripped down, I'm taking them to Battle-Born Coatings to be sandblasted and powder coated. Battle-Born Coatings did a fantastic job and charged me $250 per axle. Now my axles are gonna match my frame under the Bronco. My next stop with my axles is getting the new seals and gears put in at Tennessee Classic Trucks. Again, because I don't have a lot of the tools needed to rebuild the axles, it was a cheaper option for me to have a professional do the work. So this is everything you need to re-gear both axles. I got all of this from Tom's Off-Road, and I'll put links to everything in the description below the video. Now again, this is for re-gearing a Dana 44 front axle and your Ford 9-inch rear axle. If you're gonna put bigger tires on any Bronco, I would recommend re-gearing the axles. Most Broncos come from the factory with 350 gearing and those small radial tires. Once you add larger tires, those 350 gears will make it feel like you've lost a ton of power in your engine. But in reality, you just added too big of tires for your gears. When I had started day 2, I had already spent $2,000 for the Bronco and $400 to have the frame powder coated. In this episode, I spent $500 on the axle powder coating, $2,200 on new gears and axle shafts, and $2,000 to have both axles re-geared, for a total of $7,100. My time started at 6 hours getting the frame ready for powder, 9 hours taking apart the Dana 44, and 6 hours taking apart the Ford 9-inch. 4 hours getting the axles to and from Battleborn coatings, and 4 hours getting the axles to and from Tennessee Classic trucks, for a total of 29 hours spent on the build so far. Now, technically, I did spend 16 hours at Tennessee Classic Trucks filming them build the axles, but since I wasn't doing the work, I'm not going to count that time. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you in the next episode.